Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Soignez-vous on December 22nd, 2025. We are 3 days away from Christmas, and I've brought you a gift today. Yes, we're going to talk about a topic where it's hard to have a clear-cut opinion. People are a bit confused about the situation. So fluoride poison in your water is today's topic. I've invited an expert who is joining us on the show today, Mr. Gilles Parent, because as you know, I am a fourth-year naturopathy student and have been in the field of complementary medicine for 10 years. But if there's one topic where even the professors are sometimes a bit in the dark, they don't really know where there's still fluoride in Quebec or where it's the files. So I invited a specialist to come and clarify things with us. He came to talk to us about things we're not supposed to know, actually, about fluoride. He's someone who is very involved in the field. I'll read you his background right now because it's quite impressive. So Mr. Gilles Parent is a certified naturopath and has been practicing naturopathy since 1972. He was vice president of the Association of Certified Naturopaths, the NLAC, from 1995 to 2000. He was a member of the Canadian Association of Naturopathic Doctors from 1975 until 1998 and served on the board of directors from 1981 to 1983. From 1990 to 1999, Mr. Gilles Parent taught at the Quebec School of Higher Education in Naturopathy, ENQ, where he also served as vice president from 1991 to 1996. His publications include being the author of The Inconsistency of Fluoridation in 1975, Overcoming Arthritis in 1987, and co-author with Dr. Pierre-Jean Morin, PhD in Experimental Medicine, and Master John Remington Graham, lawyer of Fluoridation, Autopsy of a Scientific Error in 2015, as well as the English version, Fluoridation, Autopsy of a Scientific Error in 2008. Today we are presenting the latest book he contributed to, along with 35 other authors from 6 countries. The work is titled Fluoride Arm, Suppressed Science and Silenced Voices. So it has just been published. Mr. Parent is also an author of La Fluoration en Question in 1976 to 1977, author of the Memorandum for the City of Montreal in 1988 for the Common Front Against Fluoridation, during the Municipal Commission on Fluoridation, co-author of the Memorandum for the Common Front for a hearing at the Commission on Fluoridation of the National Assembly of Quebec in April 2013, co-author with Dr. Pierre-Jean Morin, PhD, of 3 petitions on fluoridation presented to the Commissioner of the Environment at the Office of the Auditor General of Canada. Petition, well, I won't list all the petitions for you, author of environmental capsules in the newsletter of the city of Denville, the Divilloise, since 2020. He is also socially involved and broadly engaged in environmental issues, scientific expert for Haute Secours for over 10 years now, and for the Common Front for Clean Water for over 20 years. Expert witness for a case currently pending in the Superior Court of Ontario against the Government of Ontario and the urban community of PIL, plaintiff for Friends of the Earth Quebec, in 4 annual pro bono research projects with law students from Laval University on fluoridation, active involvement in the rejection or cessation of fluoridation in the following cities: Montreal, Lac-Quai-de-Chemins, Quebec, Beauport, and so on. We will present to you the cities that have indeed abandoned fluoridation in recent years. Founding member and member of the Board of Directors of DeVille in transition from 2020 to today. Founding member and member of the Board of Directors of Fluoride Free Canada from 2021 to today. Founder of Citizens Against Fluoridation in 2022. Member of the Association of Certified Naturopaths of Quebec from 1994 to today. So do you know why I invited a man of this caliber to talk to you? It's because listeners often ask us, but we get discouraged. Is it really worth taking action? And when I ran into him at the Naturopaths Congress recently, I thought to myself, there you go. It's worth it to hang in there, to get involved, to be committed, and to carry the torch for the next generations and for our generation. Because indeed, there are people who take on important causes and who win. So, hello, Mr. Parent. How are you? Hello, Ms. Mayo.
Not too out of breath after all that? No, it did stretch out over 53 years after all. So,
I had the time, and I always like having naturopaths on the show who live beautifully and youthfully, because isn't it true that you have all your faculties? You are still very active, you write, you publish, you have energy to spare, let's say. So, well, listen, could you say a few words about yourself, your background, if you like to start with?
well, in the field of naturopathy, it's a passion. It's a really very interesting field. We can help people maintain their health. We cultivate health like we cultivate organic gardens. So it's a whole field in itself. Now, the issue of water fluoridation, well, I started working on that around the time of my doctoral thesis. So in naturopathy, so it's been since then, and I was involved in all the debates in almost every city in the province of Quebec, in the Pile region in Ontario, and currently in Hawkesbury, Ontario, and in the last city, because there's only one city left in Quebec that still fluoridates its water. It's Saint-Georges-de-Beauce, and we're currently working on that. And what initially motivated you
To say, I'm taking on this project, I'm carrying it forward. Well, first of all, it's that the
products used for water fluoridation are fluoride-based products. The fluorides are extremely toxic substances, about on the same level as arsenic or lead. Basically, fluorides are a bit more toxic than arsenic, a bit less toxic than arsenic, and a bit more toxic than lead. Do you find
that this substance is trivialized even by dentists, because that's what they do. They tend to downplay it and say, well, they put pressure on parents, like make sure you use toothpaste with fluoride for your children because their teeth are getting weaker. Exactly. Well, the
fluoride combines with the enamel of the tooth to form fluoroapatite, which is supposed to be more resistant to tooth decay. But even if we're exposed to fluorides our whole lives, even with toothpastes, we never reach a concentration in the enamel that would make it resistant to tooth decay. So the whole theory about water fluoridation, it's false from the start. We don't have the scientific studies. There have never been studies, fundamental studies done on fluorides, even though dentists say there are a lot of them. There are no rigorous scientific trials that have been done on fluorides, neither for effectiveness nor for safety. So fluoride is an element. It's the 13th most abundant element in the Earth's crust. It's found everywhere. It's found naturally in small amounts in water, but it's also found in vegetables, fruits, grains, and cereals. Especially nowadays, since fluoridated water is often used to prepare cereals commercially or to cook rice or anything else. You put that in water and the fluoride from the water will concentrate in the food during cooking, so it's impossible to miss out on it.
Well, that was one of the questions. And what I learned from Mr. Maurice Nicole is that actually fluoride was an industrial waste product, and they wanted to sell it to industries and kind of sprinkle it everywhere so it would be sold and used. So the products that are
used for water fluoridation are industrial waste products that are recovered. At first, they used to get it from aluminum factories, but they couldn't keep up with the price compared to the phosphate chemical fertilizer factories. So the biggest suppliers of the products used for fluoridation, that's what is collected from the pollution control chimneys of chemical fertilizer companies. It's unfit for human consumption. The companies collect these substances because they can't release them into the air since they're pollutants. That would cause extremely serious environmental damage. They can't discharge them into the river because it's a pollutant, so they collect it, and it's an industrial waste. They don't really know what to do with it. It's used in the metallurgical industry or things like that, or in the production of aluminum, but it's mainly also used for the enrichment of aluminum and uranium. So to make atomic bombs, well, that's what they used, and that's where the problem lies. At the beginning of the story, the fluorides polluted the environment so much that with the development of atomic bombs, but they tried to keep that secret. There were only a few experts who worked for these companies who were paid by the companies. Then they said, well, if we could reduce the negative image of fluoridation, I mean of fluorides in the environment, well, we would be sued less than we are right now. So they decided to start saying, well, maybe it would be good against tooth decay. They had noted that in Texas, in certain regions where the water contained a lot of fluoride, children seem to have less tooth decay, and they made a correlation between the presence of fluoride in the water and the reduction of tooth decay, even though there were other factors. For example, in Texas, people are exposed to the sun, they receive a lot of vitamin D, and the water also contained a lot of calcium. So there were a bunch of other factors, but they decided that fluoride was the element that protected teeth without any scientific basis. Okay, so there are studies right now that show that even if the water contains fluoride at the ideal amount of 0.7 parts per million or at 1.5 parts per million, the incidence of dental cavities does not change over time. Children are just as likely to get dental cavities even if the water contains a lot of fluoride. Yeah. On the contrary, as we'll see, it can actually cause harm. Yeah. And it can cause a problem with the teeth called
dental fluorosis. We'll talk about that in a bit. But what I wanted to say before we get started, it's that there's also another big problem. My young chemistry professor used to say, listen, she told the naturopathy students, if you take the fluoride that's in the water along with the lithium, which is normally present, it forms a precipitate and is eliminated in the toilet. That's it. So if people in our municipalities had access to their lithium, there would be much less depression in our societies. It's a factor. It's a factor you can support, and especially
that fluoride is now recognized. So the national program of toxicology in the United States, after reviewing all the studies that have been published in the last roughly 20 years, found that fluorides are a neurotoxic substance. At the same level as lead is neurotoxic, it lowers intellectual capacity. And it's one of the important topics we discussed in the book that was just published, which is called Fluoride Arm. And it's really interesting. Suppress science and silence voice, because the governments have made every imaginable effort to cover up the facts that fluoride was neurotoxic. Even though it had long been said that fluoride could cause fluorosis in teeth, they would say if the fluorosis is only mild, it doesn't show. These are false cases, and government agencies, dental associations, public health in Canada, in Quebec, public health in the United States, the professional orders all say that fluoride is absolutely safe and harmless, except that we don't know what concentration in water could cause harm. And it's clear that at 1.5 parts per million, it's certain that it causes it, except that water isn't the only source of fluoride. And since we have it in toothpaste, children swallow it. Since we have it in vegetables and fruits, since we find a lot of it in tea, well, at some point, the total amount exceeds the limits. And when the level is too high in the blood during pregnancy, well, it damages the brain of the unborn baby. And during the first years of life as well, it continues to damage the baby's brain, and it can lower intellectual quotient by up to 10 points. I imagine you all have, you have all the scientific references. The book here was written by 36 experts from several countries, 6 different countries, including the United States, Canada, and the editor of the book is Dr. Hardy Linebeck, who has a PhD in biochemistry, who is a dentist, and who is the former dean of the Department of Preventive Dental Medicine at the University of Toronto. In addition, he is one of the 12 experts from the United States National Research Council who produced a report on fluorides in 2006, along with 11 other specialists, including another who also contributed to the book, Dr. Tyson, who has a PhD and is an expert in risk assessment. So this book contains reports from dentists, from doctors, biochemists, researchers, and chemists from 6 different countries. So we can hear the testimonies and how these people were forced into silence, how their research positions were taken away, how research on these matters was blocked as soon as they reached the conclusion that it could be dangerous and harmful to health, because that goes against government policy. So government policy is more important than
protecting our children's brains. Exactly. After that, we end up dealing with children who are extremely, extremely anxious, extremely ADHD, extremely everything. That's it. And there are links with
ADHD with fluorides, 2 or 3 studies currently being conducted on that. So,
bravo. Interesting. If we look now, we can actually look at the cities where fluoride was removed. So you see there's the city of Laval, Montreal, Quebec, all of that. Anyway, when we took our naturopathy courses, it was unclear. The professors weren't aware or were only vaguely aware of who had removed it or not. And it's only recently that I told them, well, I met Mr. Parent, and indeed, it's only St. George.
St. George. Until recently, in the west of Montreal, Pointe Claire was supplying fluoridated water to the surrounding cities, Kirkland, L'Île Dorval, and another one whose name I've forgotten. And all those cities were receiving fluoride. There was also Dorval, and the city of Montreal looked into the matter and said, well, if we keep fluoridating these cities, we should also continue to fluoridate, or rather start fluoridating the city of Montreal itself. And by the way, the city of Montreal has rejected it 4 times. Well, 3 times and once during an election, the issue of water fluoridation, starting with Mayor Drapeau. Okay, and so, well, if we
can see on the screen, I wanted to ask you what damage?
Well, fluoride is a substance that's so toxic that 50% of the fluoride we absorb is quickly eliminated by the kidneys. Some of it isn't absorbed and is eliminated through the stool, but 50% of the fluoride we absorb is eliminated by the kidneys, and the rest accumulates in the teeth and bones, and especially in the bones, and that causes a problem called
skeletal fluorosis. That's what we're seeing on the screen right now. Dental fluorosis
are the stains that appear on the teeth, and these stains are permanent. It costs about $1,000 to $1,500 to repair a tooth that is seriously affected with fluorosis. When it's very mild, we do abrasions. So we remove a thin layer of enamel to make it less noticeable. Or otherwise, we apply composites to the surface to hide the defect in the tooth over time. And since it costs about $1,000 to $1,500 per repair, if you have 10 to fix, that's quite a bill. And the government doesn't reimburse, even though they're the ones who caused the problem by adding fluoride to the water. As for me,
I'd like to ask the parents listening to us today who are about to start saying, well, yes, recently someone told me that I absolutely had to give my child a fluoride toothpaste because I wasn't giving them any. So as a naturopath, what do we say to these people? Well,
since fluoride is just a little less toxic than arsenic, the question I would ask you is, would you use a toothpaste that contains arsenic? And everyone would say, no, that's too deadly, it's too toxic. But fluoride is a poison just as toxic as arsenic. Not to mention that naturopaths have alternatives.
Holistic dentists have alternatives. I know one who might come on the show. I hope so. But she was telling me, well, often when there's a loss of teeth one after another, it's often because the child lacks grounding and you need to have the child gnaw on carrots. And that way, he or she will develop a healthy set of teeth, which will be stronger because we eat too much soft food nowadays. We don't gnaw enough anymore. And ancestrally, humans need to gnaw to exert force. And then, of course, in naturopathy, we often see this accompanied by, we know it's accompanied by the child crying at night, right? As the bones are lengthening. And then there's an increased need for minerals, for magnesium, calcium, all that. So give them minerals. There are liquid ones and there are some in food. First of all, there are minerals in food too.
So yes, and now, well, we're starting to see toothpaste that contain hydroxyapatite, basically. Yes, we'll talk about it in another episode. Yes, that's right. So it can be just as effective, if not more effective, because the Cochrane studies in England, Cochrane reviewed all the literature since 1975 and concluded that fluoride was not
effective. And hydroxyapatite, just as a little aside, well, it's the same thing, the same component that we naturally find in our bones and in our teeth, and it creates a bonding effect. You know, it comes in and covers up the tiny holes we might have as damage. It restores the coating on our teeth. I don't really know how else to put it, the enamel of the teeth. So that's it. And it's being found more and more in specialized toothpastes, specialized ones. Oh, yeah. So there are other solutions. And the problem with
toothpastes is that young children don't have control over swallowing. And since there are 1,500 parts per million of fluoride in toothpaste, and by the way, you should never use more. If you decide to use a fluoride toothpaste, you should never put more than half a pea-sized amount. Okay, that's not much. At what point does it become intoxicated, or is it as soon as we take in or absorb fluoride, is fluoride always toxic? There is always about 50% that accumulates in the bones, and as it keeps building up in the bones, it makes the bones brittle, fragile, and it actually promotes osteoporosis, contrary to what was previously said, because when we used fluorides, it made the bones harder but also more brittle. Okay, perfect. So that's why we're better off. So swallowing a toothpaste that contains hydroxyapatite is like eating bone powder, which is widely used in agriculture.
Much less harmful.
A lot less harmful than a poison like arsenic.
You mentioned that there have been significant studies involving 6 million people.
That's right, in England.
These are robust studies. When we're talking about 6 million people, that's it.
I'm just trying to find my place in my notes because there's so much stuff. So what I also want to say is that Health Canada does not approve the chemicals used for water fluoridation to prevent dental cavities. Health Canada says these are water treatment chemicals. There is no follow-up by Health Canada to prove that these products are safe. No evidence from Health Canada that these products are effective. And yet, it's recommended by Health Canada, public health, dentists, pharmacists, and doctors in Quebec, especially pediatricians.
When you truly tried to actually get municipalities to reverse their initial decisions, was Health Canada, the federal government, very resistant to truly hearing from your expert specialists, or were they possibly quite open? In this particular situation,
Canada, they don't even want to. They don't want us to come talk to them about it. Municipal councils say that public health is effective and safe. There are 90 organizations that recommend water fluoridation as safe and effective, while studies like Lotus and I'm trying to remember, there's another one, but for me, it's not funny considering the age.
No, but there's no problem. Do you find that since COVID, it's even harder to get these kinds of points across? Because there are lawyers who told me, Caroline, there are no more rights, there's no more science since COVID. It's like we have everything and it's opposite. And it's like they shut down the courts quickly and then they just say no. That question, we don't want to debate it, we don't want to discuss it. We've already made up our minds. Is it a bit harder?
Since the beginning of the trial against the Environmental Protection Agency, because the groups, environmental groups and those against water fluoridation, joined forces in the United States to file a lawsuit against the Environmental Protection Agency, which refused to recognize the products as neurotoxic. So they carried out a trial in California with Dr. Chen, with Judge Chen. It lasted 6 years. Experts from both sides were brought to the stand. And above all, what tipped the scales was the report from the National Toxicology Program, which evaluated the studies and concluded that it was neurotoxic, so that supported the case. All the experts who had testified during the trial and the Environmental Protection Agency had no experts. Their own expert testified against the Environmental Protection Agency, stating that it was neurotoxic. So the leading experts, those who have published the most on the subject, like Grandjean, etc., and others, demonstrated during the trial that it was toxic. And the judge concluded that water fluoridation posed an unacceptable, inappropriate risk to public health.
What we can say here is that there is a wonderful unity among several countries in bringing this issue forward, which is fantastic. There really should be even more international coalitions like this.
Such groups do exist, but most countries have already passed laws making water fluoridation mandatory in cities, and often it's the city councillors who oppose it after having read the literature. So there are 2 states in the United States that have recently reversed course, states where water fluoridation used to be mandatory. So there's the state of Florida, which has made it illegal, and Utah. In Florida, what's really interesting is that it's the state's chief medical officer, Dr. Lapido, who is a physician with a PhD in biochemistry and who studied at Harvard University. He was completely conventional, but when he saw the scientific publications, he realized it didn't make any sense. We can't accept that. When we say that there are no fundamental studies proving its effectiveness, the studies were all poorly done, poorly controlled, and in many ways heavily influenced by the industry, because the sugar industry was very interested in having fluoride appear on the market so as not to hinder sugar sales. People consume a lot of sugar, and it's this sugar that promotes the growth of bacteria in the mouth. These bacteria produce acids that damage the gums and teeth. So the first thing
to encourage post-fluoride,
that's it. So the first thing to do to prevent tooth decay is to cut out sugar. And that's not easy to do. And I know it myself. When I was young and 17 years old, I used to sweeten my sugar.
But there is gum with hydroxyapatite. There
Is gum with hydroxyapatite. So
your children can chew xylitol gum. I don't know if that's really been proven. Absolutely, xylitol does reverse some cavities.
xylitol doesn't prevent cavities, meaning that since it's a sugar, it stops the bacteria from being active.
Okay? Bubble gum with xylitol. I buy that from Little Andre. It tastes like oranges. It's good.
That's right.
And then I'd like to ask you, that's it. We talked about our neighbors to the south. So in the United States, it's still largely fluoridated. Does RFK have anything to say about... Have you heard anywhere that RFK wanted to do something about that for the children?
He knows the issue very, very well. He's followed the issue just like he's followed many other issues like food additives. So he's well aware that fluoride is harmful to health. He just has to go step by step. He has just ordered the pharmaceutical companies that were making fluoride supplements to immediately withdraw them from the market, because these products, which were prescribed for 60 years in the United States by pediatricians and dentists, were not approved by the Food and Drug Department in the United States. They were not proven to be safe. No company had provided evidence to the agency for food and drugs in the United States. No company had proven that this product was effective. So these were illegal drugs prescribed by dentists and pharmacists on the American market. So this is all very recent. It was in October that the Food and Drug Department in the United States sent a warning to the companies and made it public.
You know what really surprises me in my recent reflections is that I think back to when I was studying for a doctorate at UQAM and we were told, oh, you're in societies of high knowledge and great learning. But when we're in societies of high knowledge and great learning, how is it that we're still serving this to our children? I tell myself, no, that's bullshit. Sorry for the expression, but it's because can't we offer the population the best that exists in the world and stop? We're in sectors, not in industries of high knowledge and expertise, but of high finance.
That's it. Just for the notes from earlier, the study, which was done over 10 years in England with 6 million participants, is the Lotus study. The other study is Cochrane. In 2024, so it was published very recently, and it overturns all our beliefs that fluorides were effective against dental cavities. And the other study, longitudinal perspective, it was 4 sheets. So these are still ongoing studies that clearly show picocrine, it is truly the fundamental foundation, so to speak, of comprehensive public health initiatives and well-being.
So
they're just going to check whether the measures recommended by governments are valid or not. They came to the conclusion that it hardly reduced dental cavities at all, and that if the data they had showed a reduction of 2 or 4%, it was probably because the studies were biased. So when a report like Cochrane comes to the conclusion that it's biased, that's really serious.
Absolutely. I'd also like to ask you actually about the harmful health effects. I think there are others that you mentioned.
Yes, well, let's say that fluoride, it's in the same family of halogens as chlorine and iodine. Since it's more reactive, it displaces iodine, and iodine is essential for thyroid function. So by reducing the availability of iodine, you affect thyroid function. The most prescribed medication in the United States is Synthroid, because there are a huge number of people suffering from hypothyroidism, and in part is because of fluoride. In the United States, about 75% of the population drank fluoridated water. Now, that number has decreased if you count the population that isn't supplied with municipal water. We're now down to around 54% of the population drinking fluoridated water in the United States, whereas it was close to 75% about 4 or 5
years ago. And Synthroid, it's not another medication. That's what we know in naturopathy as a medication that works more or less well. There are other more effective ways. Among other things, in naturopathy, we use it to rebalance the thyroid.
Basically, the thyroid could function well if we provided it with the right nutrients. Thyroid hormone is made from the amino acid tyrosine, along with iodine, selenium, and other
elements, zinc and cofactors.
Cofactors to carry out the reactions. we could solve the problem. But if we keep drinking fluoridated water, well, the iodine isn't available, and people don't consume a lot of seafood. It's rare for people to eat seaweed and so on. So these could be factors that might prevent the problem. But the thyroid, by affecting the thyroid, iodine as well, by affecting the thyroid, fluoride as well, it will slow down thyroid function. And the thyroid plays an important role in brain development in children. So there's a link between hypothyroidism in the mother, hypothyroidism in the baby, and a decrease in IQ. The thyroid also controls metabolism levels, protein synthesis, so it plays a very
important role. It's the conductor for all the cells found in the brain or in the heart.
or throughout the entire body. In the lungs,
It's the conductor of all the cells. Every heartbeat is under the control of the thyroid.
and then we also discovered that fluoride, much like certain types of chemical fertilizers and indeed the various products we meticulously use to prevent the growth of unwanted weeds. Yes,
Herbicides, glyphosates. Yes, herbicides,
glyphosates, it affects the lining of the intestine. Well, fluoride affects the lining of the intestine, and it's a big problem in India, where the water naturally contains too much fluoride. Now, what we use for water fluoridation are products that are man-made, that don't exist in nature. They're artificial. We don't know how they're going to react in the body. They've never been studied. Neither the governments of the United States nor the Canadian governments have ever approved, that is accepted, that these products be used for therapeutic purposes. So the Food and Drug Administration in the United States and Health Canada do not approve the products used for water fluoridation. And what's serious is that Health Canada never told the dental associations, never told the municipalities, never told public health that these products were not approved by Health Canada.
wow,
That's serious.
yes, it's serious. Another serious thing is that, as you say in your talk, fluoride is a drug and it's illegal to impose it in the water without the consent of the population.
We have a specific law in Quebec that clearly says,
There are laws in Quebec.
that's right, which say that you don't have the right to give a drug without consent from the person. And any substance that is defined as something that can be used for the treatment or prevention of a disease must be classified as a drug by Health Canada, and Health Canada does not classify them as drugs. So if we add these products to drinking water, since they should be classified as drugs, that actually makes it an illegal drug. And since it's being imposed on people, because once it's put in the water, it's very hard to avoid consuming it. Well, that goes against medical ethics, but also against Quebec's law on medications.
Well, listen, I want to congratulate you on your courage, because I think there are a lot of naturopaths who are a bit fearful and who sometimes don't dare to take on cases like this, especially in front of the government. And I tip my hat to your determination, because it really makes a difference in life.
With Canada Sans Fluorure, which you can support financially by making a contribution. Yes, of course, we'll definitely put the link on.
The screen, you can donate as well. You
can donate. Well, the president of that group, Canada Sans Fluorure, or in English, Fluoride Free Canada, is a doctor from the Calgary area who is fighting against the city of Calgary. His license was taken away because he got angry at the dental associations that were suing him for opposing water fluoridation. So he kind of accused them of lying and not telling the whole truth. And in terms of professional ethics, you can't accuse your colleagues of lying, even if it's true.
Yes. Well, that's one of our, as Alain Deneau said, the professor said, well, despite ourselves, they are introducing us into a kind of mafia-like system.
Well, in a certain sense, and everyone encourages each other.
You have to submit to your group, your association, your...
So the government say, well, the product is safe. The National Sanitation Foundation Group, which manages the quality of products used for water treatment, they say that they are the ones who do the toxicology tests to prove that the product is safe. But if we go directly to the National Sanitation Foundation's website, they say we check the chemical quality of the products, but not the effectiveness of the product and not the safety of the product. The safety is not proven by us. And anyway, the National
Sanitation, so they're saying that
it's not our task.
It's not
our responsibility. Health Canada, they say it's not our responsibility because Water treatment falls under provincial jurisdiction. So it's the Quebec Ministry of Health and Social Services that passed a law allowing cities to add fluoride. It's the ministry that pays for the products. It's the ministry that pays for the equipment, for the installations. It costs millions to install. In Calgary, it's around $40 million for the plant to add fluoride to the water. That's a lot of money. So it's the Quebec governments that pay for all of this, but they're not responsible for the product.
Are you advocating then that the government should use that money earlier to give us an increase? Healthy, because we as naturopaths know that when it comes to inputs, no matter how many supplements you give someone, no matter how much you detoxify, help support their liver, etc., it all starts with the inputs you take in your daily life. And that's where detox begins. It's about having water of the highest
purity. Water should always be as pure as possible. And
everything we use for personal hygiene,
except that our rivers are, at the same time, the dumping grounds and also the sewers of the cities. All cities and most cities only do primary treatment, so they don't remove toxic substances, solvents, or PFS. All these substances end up in the rivers, and the cities draw their water from the rivers. They filter and treat it, but they don't remove everything toxic from the river water. And in the end, it ends up in the water we drink. In Canada, our rivers are much less polluted than those in the United States. I wouldn't want to be in New Orleans drinking water from the Mississippi because the water is almost solid with all the waste in it. So in Canada, we're lucky to have water that's much less polluted. But even then, city water always comes from our rivers or lakes, which often are polluted. But the fact of adding a pollutant, because water fluoridation products are contaminated with heavy metals like arsenic, lead, cadmium, and aluminum. These products are unfit for human consumption. They are not prepared under sanitary conditions. There is no one monitoring the sanitary quality of the products used for water fluoridation, and that's what we're putting into our city water. So it's much more serious to add fluorides to the water because we are deliberately, by choice, contaminating it by adding these products. So the Quebec Ministry of Health says, well, since it's very, very diluted, we only add 0.7 parts per million. The concentrations of arsenic we add are within acceptable limits. But there are no acceptable limits. For arsenic, it's always toxic. We can tolerate some because it's hard to remove it all, but there is no safe zone for arsenic, nor for lead, nor for cadmium, nor for mercury. And as for aluminum, we tolerate a bit more because the body is less able to absorb it, but it's still toxic in the long run.
To finish, can we tell the people of Saint-Georges where you are at in the process? How can people help? Will you be giving more talks in Saint-Georges? For my part, I would like to suggest to Réinfo Québec to have you give a talk because we can't cover everything here in a 35-minute show. But it's certain that you have...
We've already done it. There's already a show on the community network over there about the water fluoridation, a talk we gave last
year. I saw it on YouTube as well.
So very interesting. And of course, if you're able to help the opponents, so Saint-Georges Saint-Flour, then you can help them financially. There's a petition circulating in Saint-Georges. There are already over 2,000 signatures for a small town of 25,000 inhabitants in the city itself.
Okay, the petition can be found on a website?
On the Saint-Georges Saint-Flour website. Perfect. So that's perfect.
So is it only people from Saint-Georges who can sign it?
Yes, of course.
Yes, obviously, yes.
That's right. But if you help them financially, the money can come from anywhere.
Yes.
So there's another book we wrote a few years ago in 2005, Fluoridation, Autopsy of a Scientific Error, with Pierre Guimorin and the lawyer who led 3 lawsuits in the United States, which we also won. So it's just to say that it's not just some crackpots speaking out against water fluoridation.
Bravo.
Like the other book, it's 36 activists, doctors, dentists, chemists, biochemists, etc., who wrote the book. So many of them have credentials that are 3 or 4 pages long. So it's very serious. From 6 different countries. So the more you inform yourself, well, the more you're going to have nightmares at night.
Yes, well, getting informed is about gaining power and above all, developing our critical thinking. Well, thank you. I think we've covered everything, at least to inform people, to raise awareness about the importance of getting involved as well, of supporting at the very least those who are making so much effort.
Well, it's my pleasure, Mrs. Mayot.
Thanks, C.
It was a great pleasure working with you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Good.
Bye.
Thank you all. See you on a future show at the next appointment for Soignez-vous. See you soon. Thank you for being here.